The ballroom was packed with 100 familiar faces when my wife stood up, tapped her champagne glass, and announced she was divorcing me. Right there, on my 42nd birthday, in front of every relative, friend, and coworker we knew. But that was just the beginning of the nightmare. My name is Nathan Cross. I'm 42 years old, and until that Saturday evening in late September, I thought I had everything figured out. I'd been married to Jessica for 16 years. We met at a community college fundraiser when I was 26 and she was 23. She was studying graphic design, and I was working my way up in commercial real estate development. Back then, she had this energy about her, like she could light up a room just by walking into it. We got married 8 months later, bought a small house in Riverside, and spent the next decade and a half building what I thought was a solid life together. I worked as a senior project manager at Henderson Development Group, coordinating construction projects across 3 states. It was demanding work, long hours, constant travel, but it paid well. Really well. Jessica had stopped working about 5 years into our marriage, said she wanted to focus on building our home, maybe start a family eventually. We never did have kids, and looking back now, I realized that should have told me something. Jessica's family was different from mine. Where I came from working-class stock, people who earned everything they had. Her family had money, old money, from her father's side. Richard Brennan owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across the Midwest. His wife, Vivian, came from banking wealth and had never worked a day in her life. Their younger daughter, Jessica's sister Amber, was 32 and worked as a marketing director at one of Richard's dealerships, though everyone knew it was a title without real responsibility. For years, I'd felt the judgment from Jessica's family. The way Richard would ask pointed questions about my salary, my career trajectory, whether I was providing adequately for his daughter. The way Vivian would make comments about the house we lived in, comparing it to the estates her friends' children owned. The way Amber would roll her eyes whenever I talked about work, like blue-collar management was beneath their notice. But Jessica had always defended me. At least, I thought she had. She'd tell me to ignore them, that they were just old-fashioned, that what mattered was our relationship. I believed her because I wanted to. Because when you've been married for 16 years, you stop questioning the foundation you're standing on. 3 weeks before my birthday, Jessica suggested we do something special this year. "Nathan, honey," she'd said over breakfast one Tuesday morning, "I know you usually prefer quiet birthdays, but I was thinking we could do something bigger this year. 42 is almost mid-40s. We should celebrate properly." I'd looked up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing blueprints for a medical complex in Kansas City. "What did you have in mind?" "A dinner party. Nothing crazy, just family and close friends. Maybe 50 or 60 people. We could rent out the banquet room at the Riverside Hotel. Make it nice." The Riverside Hotel was where we'd gotten married. The suggestion felt sentimental, romantic even. I smiled and agreed without thinking twice. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts on what's happening, and don't forget to like this video to help others discover these stories. Now, let's continue. Jessica handled all the planning. She said she wanted it to be a surprise, wanted to take the pressure off me since I was juggling 3 major projects at work. I gave her my credit card and told her to make it special. "Do whatever you want, babe. This is your show." Over the next 3 weeks, I noticed her spending a lot of time on the phone, having hushed conversations that would stop abruptly when I entered the room. When I asked about it, she'd wave me off with explanations about coordinating with the caterer, confirming the guest list, dealing with the hotel event manager. All reasonable explanations for someone planning a large party. The Thursday before my birthday, I came home from a site inspection in Jefferson City to find Jessica and Amber sitting at our dining room table, surrounded by papers and laptops. They both looked up when I walked in, and something passed between them. A look I couldn't quite decode. "Nathan, you're home early?" Jessica said, gathering up some of the papers quickly. "Traffic was lighter than expected," I replied, setting down my briefcase. "What are you two working on?" "Just last-minute party details," Amber said, closing her laptop with a sharp click. "Jessica's being such a perfectionist about everything." I walked over and kissed Jessica's cheek. "You don't need to stress so much. Whatever you've planned will be perfect." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I want everything to be exactly right. You deserve that. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs I missed. The way Jessica had started sleeping in the guest room 3 nights a week, claiming my snoring kept her awake. The way she'd become increasingly critical of everything I did, from how I loaded the dishwasher to how I spoke to her parents. The way she'd stopped asking about my day, stopped showing interest in my work, stopped touching me unless there was a specific reason. But when you're in the middle of it, when you've built 16 years of history with someone, you rationalize. You tell yourself it's stress, it's temporary, it's just a rough patch that all marriages go through. You don't see the cliff until you're already falling off it. Saturday arrived with perfect autumn weather. Crisp air, clear skies, the kind of day that makes you grateful to be alive. I spent the morning at home catching up on paperwork, while Jessica got her hair and nails done. She told me the party started at 7 p.m., and I should wear my best suit, the charcoal gray one I'd bought for her cousin's wedding 2 years ago. Around 4 p.m., Jessica came home looking stunning. Her auburn hair was styled in elegant waves, her makeup was flawless, and she was carrying 3 shopping bags from expensive boutiques. "You look beautiful," I told her as she walked past me toward the bedroom. "Thank you," she said without looking at me. "You should start getting ready. We need to leave by 6:15. I showered, shaved, and put on the suit she'd requested. When I came downstairs at 6, Jessica was waiting by the door in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She looked me up and down with an expression I couldn't read. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready." The drive to the Riverside Hotel took 20 minutes. Jessica was quiet the entire way, checking her phone constantly, typing rapid-fire messages to someone. When I asked if everything was okay, she just nodded and said she was coordinating with the caterer. We pulled into the hotel parking lot at 6:40. The lot was already packed with cars I recognized. My brother Trevor's pickup truck, Jessica's parents' Mercedes, vehicles belonging to our neighbors, my co-workers, extended family members I only saw at holidays. "Wow," I said, impressed. "You really went all out with the guest list." Jessica's jaw was tight as she checked her reflection in the visor mirror one last time. "You have no idea." We walked through the hotel lobby and I could hear music and conversation coming from the banquet hall. When we reached the entrance, Jessica paused and turned to face me. "Nathan, whatever happens in there, just remember that this is for the best, for both of us." Before I could ask what she meant, she pushed open the double doors. The room was even more crowded than I'd expected. I did a quick count and estimated at least 100 people. Every face turned toward us as we entered. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. The music cut off abruptly. My brother Trevor stood near the back wall next to our mother. His face was grim, and he was shaking his head slowly. My co-worker David, who I'd worked with for 8 years, was standing by the bar looking uncomfortable. Jessica's parents sat at a table front and center, Richard with his arms crossed and Vivian with a satisfied smile. Something was very wrong. Jessica led me to the middle of the room where a small stage had been set up. On it was a table with a microphone, a large envelope, and a poster board covered with fabric. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jessica picked up the microphone and her voice echoed through the suddenly silent room. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I know this isn't what anyone expected, but I needed witnesses for this." My stomach dropped. "Jessica, what are you doing?" She turned to face me, and for the first time I saw the coldness in her eyes. Something that had probably been there for months, maybe years, that I'd been too blind to see. "Nathan Cross," she announced to the room. "We've been married for 16 years. 16 years of me waiting for you to become the man I thought you'd be. 16 years of disappointment and mediocrity. 16 years of watching my friends' husbands succeed while you stayed stuck in middle management." The words hit me like physical blows. "Jessica, we can talk about this at home. Not here." She laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "That's exactly your problem, Nathan. Always wanting to hide from reality. Always wanting to keep things quiet and comfortable. Well, I'm done being quiet." She pulled the fabric off the poster board behind her. It was a collage of photographs, pictures of me from throughout our marriage, but each one had been defaced. Red X's drawn over my face. The word failure written across images of me at work sites, at family gatherings, at our wedding. I felt the room spinning. 100 pairs of eyes were locked on me, watching my humiliation unfold in real time. Jessica continued, her voice growing stronger. You all know Nathan, the hard-working project manager, the dedicated husband. But what you don't know is that for 5 years, I've been supporting us. My family has been supporting us. Because Nathan's career has been stagnant and his salary hasn't kept up with our lifestyle. That wasn't true. I made $180,000 a year. We lived comfortably, never struggled with bills, had savings in the bank. But Jessica was rewriting history in front of everyone who mattered. She reached for the large envelope on the table and pulled out a stack of papers. These are divorce papers. I'm filing for divorce tonight in front of all of you, so everyone knows exactly what kind of husband Nathan Cross really is. Richard Brennan stood up from his table, holding another envelope. Before you walk out of here, Nathan, we need to settle accounts. I could barely process what was happening. Settle what accounts? Richard walked up to the stage and stood next to his daughter. Every cent my family has invested in supporting you over the years. We've calculated it all out. Housing subsidies, car payments, insurance premiums, gifts that were really just covering your inadequacies. It comes to $248,000. The number was absurd. We'd never asked for money from Jessica's family. Sure, they'd given us generous gifts at Christmas and birthdays, maybe paid for a few vacations, but $248,000? You have two options, Richard said, his voice cold and businesslike. Pay us back in full, or I'm prepared to pursue legal action. And let me be clear, Nathan, I have lawyers who specialize in fraud and financial exploitation. This is insane, I managed to say. You can't just make up debts. Amber appeared beside her father, holding up her phone. Every transaction documented, every gift logged, every dinner we paid for, every loan we extended. All of it tracked over 16 years. And you signed paperwork acknowledging some of it as loans, not gifts. I didn't remember signing any such paperwork, but my mind was too clouded with shock to process details. Then Amber walked over to where I'd set my car keys on a side table when we arrived. She picked them up and dangled them in front of the crowd. Oh, and these? The car title was transferred to me yesterday. That BMW you've been driving? Jessica already signed it over as part of the divorce settlement you're going to agree to. I felt like I was watching this happen to someone else. This couldn't be real. Jessica wouldn't do this. Her family wouldn't orchestrate something so cruel. But I was wrong. The final blow came when my boss, Gerald Henderson, walked up to the stage. I'd wondered why he was at my birthday party. We had a professional relationship, but weren't exactly friends. Now I understood. Nathan, Gerald said, his voice heavy with what might have been genuine regret or might have been practiced sympathy. I'm sorry to do this here, but Jessica reached out to our HR department last week. She's provided documentation of some concerning behavior. What behavior? I asked, my voice cracking. Gerald handed me a folder. Inside were printed emails, allegedly from my work account, containing inappropriate messages to a female coworker named Jennifer. Messages I'd never written, advances I'd never made. These aren't real, I said, my hands shaking as I flipped through page after page of fabricated evidence. I've never sent anything like this. Jennifer and I barely interact. The company has to take allegations of workplace harassment seriously, Gerald continued. Effective immediately. You're terminated. HR will contact you Monday about final paperwork and your last paycheck. The room was spinning now. Everything I had, everything I'd built, was being stripped away in front of 100 witnesses. My marriage, my home, my car, my reputation, my career. All of it gone in less than 20 minutes. Jessica walked up to me and held out a pen. Sign the divorce papers, Nathan. Make this easy on yourself. I looked around the room at all those faces. Some looked uncomfortable, probably wishing they weren't witnessing this. Others looked satisfied, like this was exactly the entertainment they'd hoped for. My brother started moving toward the stage, but my mother grabbed his arm and held him back. Nathan, Jessica said again. The papers. I took the pen with a hand that didn't feel like mine. I looked down at the papers, saw terms that gave Jessica everything. The house, most of our savings, full ownership of all shared assets. I was being left with nothing but my personal belongings and whatever debt she decided to saddle me with. Something inside me broke. Or maybe it finally woke up. I set the pen down without signing anything. "No," I said quietly. Jessica's confident expression faltered for just a second. "What?" I said, "No, I'm not signing these papers. Not here, not like this, and not without my own attorney reviewing every single line." Richard stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You're not in a position to negotiate, Nathan." I looked at him directly. "Neither are you, Richard, because none of this is legal. You can't fabricate debts. You can't claim gifts were loans without proper documentation, and you definitely can't hold me hostage with threats of fraud charges that would never hold up in court." I turned to Gerald. "And you, terminating someone based on unverified allegations without a proper investigation? That's wrongful termination. I'll be speaking with an employment attorney Monday morning." Jennifer, the woman I'd allegedly harassed, suddenly spoke up from the back of the room. "I never filed any complaint. I was asked to sign a statement last week, but I refused because nothing ever happened. I tried to tell HR this was a setup, but nobody would listen." The satisfaction on Jessica's face was crumbling. "Nathan, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm not making this hard, Jessica. You did that all by yourself." I walked off the stage and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear chaos erupting. Voices arguing, people demanding explanations. But I didn't look back. My brother Trevor caught up with me in the parking lot. "Nathan, wait. Let me drive you somewhere. I need to be alone right now," I told him. "Mom wants you to come stay with us. Just until you figure things out." I shook my head. "I'll figure it out on my own." Trevor looked like he wanted to argue, but he just nodded and handed me his car keys. "Take my truck. That BMW wasn't yours anyway, apparently. We'll sort out the vehicles later." I drove to a hotel on the other side of town, checked in using cash I had in my wallet, and sat on the bed in a generic room that smelled like industrial cleaner in other people's lives. My phone started ringing around midnight. Jessica first, then Amber, then Richard, then numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off and stared at the ceiling until dawn. Monday morning, I turned my phone back on. 73 missed calls, 42 voicemails, over 100 text messages. The first voicemail was from Jessica, her voice panicked. "Nathan, where are you? We need to talk. This got out of hand. Please call me back." The second was from Richard, his previous confidence replaced with something that sounded like concern. "Nathan, this is Richard. Let's sit down and discuss this reasonably. Nobody needs to involve lawyers." The third was from Amber. "Nathan, seriously, just answer your phone. My sister is losing it. You're being childish." I deleted them all without listening to the rest. By Tuesday, the calls had increased to every 30 minutes. Wednesday, they were coming constantly from different numbers. Jessica had apparently enlisted her entire family and friend network to track me down. Thursday afternoon, my brother called. "Nathan, Mom's getting calls at the house. Jessica's claiming you abandoned her, that you're hiding assets. She's calling anyone who might know where you are." "Let her call," I said. "I'm not hiding. I'm just not engaging with her circus." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done years ago, Trevor. Stand up for myself." That evening, I met with an attorney named Patricia Chen, who specialized in divorce cases involving financial fraud. I showed her everything. The fabricated debt claims, the forged emails, the improper title transfer of my vehicle, the documentation of wrongful termination. Patricia smiled. "Mr. Cross, your wife made a critical error. She thought public humiliation would break you into submission. Instead, she created a room full of witnesses to fraud, defamation, and conspiracy." "Can we fix this?" "Fix it?" Patricia said. "We're going to destroy her case so thoroughly that she'll be lucky to walk away with anything." Over the next 3 days, Patricia filed emergency motions with the court, restraining orders against property transfer, injunctions against Jessica accessing our joint accounts, formal complaints with my employer's HR department and legal team about wrongful termination based on fraudulent evidence. She also served subpoenas for Jennifer's testimony, for the hotel security footage from the party, and for financial records from Richard's dealerships, showing that the alleged $248,000 in loans were actually gifts reported as such for tax purposes. By Monday, exactly 1 week after my birthday party, my phone was ringing 50 times a day, but now the voicemails had changed tone entirely. "Nathan, this is Richard. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we acted hastily. Can we discuss this like adults? Nathan, it's Amber. Look, the car thing was just Jessica being emotional. We can work something out. Just call us back. Nathan, please. This is Jessica. I love you. I don't know what came over me at the party. Please come home so we can fix this. I didn't return a single call. Patricia scheduled a formal mediation for 2 weeks out. In the meantime, she'd frozen all disputed assets, gotten my termination reversed pending a full investigation, and filed countercharges against Jessica for fraud, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The week before mediation, I finally agreed to meet Jessica in person at Patricia's office. She arrived looking nothing like the confident woman who'd orchestrated my public humiliation. Her eyes were red, her hair was pulled back messily, and she was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. Nathan, she started the moment she saw me. I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. My father convinced me this was the right approach, but I see now how wrong it was. Your father convinced you? I asked calmly. Jessica, you stood on a stage and told 100 people I was a failure. You fabricated evidence to get me fired. You tried to steal our assets. That wasn't your father. That was you. I was angry. I felt neglected. I thought if I shocked you, maybe you'd finally see what you were losing. Patricia interrupted. Mrs. Cross, perhaps we should focus on the legal matters at hand rather than relationship issues. Jessica turned to her. Can't we just drop all this and start over? I don't want the divorce anymore. I want my husband back. Unfortunately, I said, I do want the divorce now. In fact, I'm grateful for that party. It showed me exactly who I married. The mediation was brutal. Patricia presented evidence of every fraudulent claim, every false statement, every attempt to manipulate or intimidate me. Richard and Vivian sat stone-faced as their carefully constructed narrative fell apart. Amber left the room twice, unable to handle the cross-examination. In the end, the settlement was nothing like what Jessica had originally demanded. I kept the house, half our savings, my car, which was legally mine regardless of any paperwork Amber had forged, and full rights to pursue legal action against anyone who'd participated in the fraud. Jessica walked away with her personal belongings and enough money to get started somewhere else. Richard and Vivian were required to sign affidavits acknowledging that all money given to us over the years were gifts, not loans, and that any attempt to claim otherwise would result in tax fraud charges. Gerald Henderson, my former boss, reinstated me with full back pay and a formal apology. The company quietly let go the HR director who'd processed my termination without proper investigation. Jennifer received a settlement for being dragged into a false harassment claim. 6 months later, I stood in my living room, the same room where Jessica and I had spent 16 years building a life together, and realized I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of her family's judgment, her constant criticism, her need to perform for people who'd never actually cared about me, it was all gone. Trevor stopped by with pizza and beer. How you holding up, little brother? Honestly? Better than I've been in a decade, maybe longer. He clinked his beer bottle against mine. To birthday parties that show you the truth. To the truth, I agreed. My phone buzzed. Another message from Jessica, her 10th this week. Nathan, I've been going to therapy. I understand now what I did wrong. Is there any chance we could try again? I deleted it without responding. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. And sometimes the best thing that can happen to a man is having his whole world torn down so he can build something better from the pieces. Jessica tried to humiliate me in front of 100 people, thinking it would break me into submission. Instead, she freed me from a marriage I didn't realize was slowly suffocating who I was. Her father tried to intimidate me with fabricated debts, thinking I'd be too scared to fight back. Instead, he taught me exactly how ruthless I needed to be, to protect myself. A year after that birthday party, I accepted a promotion at Henderson Development Group that nearly doubled my salary. I bought a new house across town, started dating a woman named Claire, who worked as a nurse and didn't care about status or image or what kind of car I drove. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage because Jessica had never liked them. I ran into Amber at a restaurant downtown. She was with some friends, and when our eyes met, she quickly looked away. I walked over to their table anyway. Amber, I said, keeping my voice friendly. How are you? She shifted uncomfortably. I'm fine, Nathan. Look, about everything that happened. You helped your sister try to destroy me, I interrupted. You forged documents, participated in fraud, and thought it was all just good fun. I haven't forgotten that. Her friends were staring now. Nathan, please. But I want you to know I've forgiven you, I continued. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger at people like you isn't worth the energy. You and your family thought you could break me. You were wrong, and that's all I needed to learn about you. I walked away before she could respond, and it felt better than any revenge I could have planned. The truth is, Jessica and her family did me a favor that night. They showed me exactly who they were when they thought they had all the power. They taught me that some people see relationships as transactions, marriages as social climbing tools, and loyalty as something you maintain only as long as it benefits you. They also taught me that I'm stronger than I ever knew, that I don't need to accept someone else's definition of success or failure, that sometimes walking away with nothing is better than staying with everything. My 43rd birthday came around this year. I celebrated quietly with Trevor, Claire, and a few close friends at a steakhouse. No banquet halls, no surprise announcements, just good food and better company. Claire leaned over during dessert and squeezed my hand. Happy birthday, Nathan. This has been a good year for you. I thought about where I'd been 12 months ago, standing on that stage, watching my life implode in front of 100 witnesses, being told I was a failure, a disappointment, a burden. It's been the best year of my life, I told her, and I meant it, because sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is exactly what needed to happen. Sometimes being betrayed is the only way to see how much you'd been betraying yourself by staying. Sometimes losing everything is how you discover what actually matters. Jessica calls less frequently now, maybe once a month. The messages have evolved from apologies to nostalgia to finally, recently, angry accusations that I'm being stubborn and refusing to acknowledge the good parts of our relationship. I don't respond to any of them. There's nothing left to say. Richard and Vivian moved to Arizona to be closer to Amber, who apparently needed emotional support after everything that happened. I heard through Trevor that Jessica moved in with them for a while, but the arrangement didn't last. Something about her parents realizing that their daughter wasn't quite the victim they'd imagined her to be. Gerald Henderson became not just my boss, but a genuine friend. He told me months later that he'd had doubts about the harassment allegations from the start, but had been pressured by the HR director who, it turned out, had been friends with Vivian Brennan for years. The whole thing had been orchestrated with more players than I'd realized. What matters is that I survived it. More than survived, I thrived after it. And I learned that the people who truly care about you don't need to witness your humiliation to believe in you. They believe in you, especially when others are trying to tear you down. If you're watching this and you've ever felt trapped in a relationship where you're constantly being told you're not enough, where your worth is measured by someone else's impossible standards, where love feels conditional on meeting expectations you never agreed to, let me tell you something. Walk away. Whatever you think you'll lose by leaving is nothing compared to what you'll gain by finding yourself again. Jessica thought that birthday party would be my ending. Instead, it was my beginning. The beginning of the life I should have been living all along.